Welcome back to another episode of More People, More Problems with
Woo!
Chelsea dancing over there and myself, Brittany. Today we have a good one. We're essentially going to talk about all the times, maybe not all the times, but many
No,
of the times that we've fucked up,
some of
aka
the
we will
times.
some of the times. We'll give you a few curated examples.
Yeah.
Um, but no, in all seriousness, we're going to talk about failing forward. And so I'm really excited to go into that. And before we do, I just want to remind, especially today, because we are going to be giving more examples, that what we share is always done with the utmost, respect, confidence. We will choose our stories wisely on what we share. That's really important to us. And I hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to like and do all that good stuff. But on that note, let's kick it off with the story. So, Chelsea, when have you failed?
So many times,
Yeah.
so many times, and I'll be honest, probably a lot of people will say this, it's takes years and years to figure out that failing is actually a good thing and how much you can learn from failing. So I've only really come into this in the last couple of years. So I'll give you a kind of a more recent example that I was actually able to recognize the failure as an ingredient for success later. Okay, so last year we were planning a big succession planning exercise, a lot of homework for all the folks involved, massive templates for people to complete. Obviously, all the information needed and valuable information. I just don't think that in the end we executed properly. We ended up having a lot of absences at the meetings to kind of have the discussions. We didn't have enough pointed questions or structure in place to get the information we wanted. So we had gaps all over the place. Got complaints afterwards that some people felt like it was an utter waste of time. And
Oh, that's not
and
feel good, does it?
yeah, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good at all, and I think you have to look at that through a lens, and it was hard at the moment, for sure. It was really hard at the moment to get that feedback. But for me, it was kind of a little tool in my toolbox to go, okay, well, obviously we have to do this every year. This wasn't a one-off thing. This has to be a lot better next year. I need to think about what's the best use of my time, my team's time, all the folks who are involved, because everyone's in it together on succession planning, obviously. Had to do a lot of discussions outside of my own organization, asking for templates, asking for feedback, how they, run their own processes. And so fast forward now to us kind of, it's been over a year and we're doing the same thing this year, completely 180, completely 180 on how we re-envision this process by harnessing that feedback that we were given and actually making valuable changes that we've been able to come such a long way, where I'm getting the opposite types of remarks from folks. And I feel it myself too, in seeing
Yeah.
the way my team is working efficiently, the way we all feel like on the same page about it. But
It
I
just
don't
makes
want
you
to go
realize
into.
that first step is like you have to eat a piece of that humble pie. Like it is so hard to even acknowledge and actually rewind. I think the first thing is, what is even failure? Like in my brain, in my simple brain, I go, you intend for one outcome and that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So you failed at achieving that.
Mhm.
And it can be because of external factors or internal factors to yourself. But once you realize, okay, it's a failure, then you have to actually take a minute and sit with that.
Mhm.
And when you said, I haven't been able to recognize that failure can be an important ingredient to success in the future and growth until more recent years, like exact same ditto, because I think we grow up in a nature, in a world where it's told like success, be good, be great, and if you are,
Perfection.
there's a lot of, whether it's meant to be or not, shame and judgment of
Mhm.
you messed up. And so that humility that is actually required and self-awareness in the beginning, it's so hard and so counterintuitive to how we grew up, but also even how the brain works. The brain works to actually really dislike failure and the feelings that come with it. We can get into that, but I'm realizing now I cut off your story, but there's just so many interesting realizations as you say that around the process of it.
Absolutely. No, the story was done anyways, and I mean, without going into more detail, I think you've broken it down really nicely. It didn't happen the way you expected it to happen, or maybe the way your boss expected it to happen,
Yeah, yeah,
possibly.
yeah,
That
fair.
feels even worse, I'll tell you
Yeah.
that one.
You're like, "I
You're like,
thought I did it right."
"Yeah, this was great." "Yeah, no, that was shit."
Yeah.
Um, but it's like it's how you bounce back from that failure, and I was reading something last night about failure is a part of the journey, right? It has
Yeah.
to be a part of the journey because you can't actually reach those successes without having those bumps in the road. And we've talked about before making the same mistakes over and over and over again. Nobody's saying that that's a good thing. Okay.
Yeah, 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 let's be
Ima-
really clear.
like, imagine that was a colossal failure. And this year I said, okay, here we go, doing it all over again. Like,
Shipping it
no,
out as is.
that would be stupid, and
Yeah.
I've spoken to a lot of folks about as making those same mistakes over and over. That for me unacceptable, and I wouldn't expect that. I would say the same for myself.
Yeah.
Learn from your mistakes and push yourself forward to something that's going to get you the success. You might do something different and get another failure, but at least you
Yeah,
did
yeah,
something
yeah, but
different,
but
right?
that's the failing forward. It's failing and creating the momentum forward, whereas if you keep making the same mistake and failing in the same thing, you're not actually moving forward in anything. And so, like, I think what happens a lot of times when people fail at something, um, and whether this is, like, nurture or nature, because I think there is some actual, like, psychology behind it of how our brains work and how we don't wanna fail, but also how the society has taught us to react, but regardless of that, when you fail, you can pretend it never happened. You can avoid it at all cost and walk away, which is more of
Ooh,
that fixed mindset. I did that
yep.
with soccer when I was young. Couldn't even like dribble a ball. Is that what it's called? Dribble. Anyways, couldn't pass, couldn't do anything, and was like, I ain't good at this. I failed. I'm not doing this again. So that's a
Ooh,
very fair outcome. Or else there's the, oh, realize what you did and learn from it. And it might not be perfect, but you're moving forward. And I think that's the epitome of today's topic, which is how do you really start to become aware that failing, it's a
mhm,
mindset shift, right? It's a new perspective. It's reframing that failing isn't always a bad thing.
no,
Failing can be such a lucrative opportunity to
absolutely.
expose more growth, more learnings, more opportunities. And it's whether or not you take control of it. Because in the moment when you fail, let's not sugarcoat this. It fucking sucks. Like,
Yep.
whether it's small or big, I can think of so many like small failures I've had, going to present something or having a conversation with my boss, Toby, and being like, okay. And I would jump into solution and I would like, it's a fire. We got to put it out. I would give no context. I wouldn't give all the research. I wouldn't get the thought. And he would just be like, shut you down. I don't even want to talk about it. I
Ooh,
failed at
been
my
there.
influence, at my communication. And so I was shameful. I was embarrassed. I didn't even want to address it. But once I started to reframe that and say, where's the opportunity? How can I actually manage up? How can I communicate? How can I influence?
Mhm,
Then it unlocks. And I took the control back. I realized I get to decide. And this is especially important when it's external factors that are creating a failure instead of what you've done. Sometimes you can do everything right and go to do something and your outcome doesn't achieve because of external factors. Great example of that is you have a great candidate, you're going to hire them, you put together a perfect package comp wise for, the company that you're in the market. And in the end, and a new external factor comes in, their friend of theirs decides that they all of a sudden want to hire them and they're like, "Well, the
ooh,
comp's less, the job isn't as attractive, but I want to work with Chelsea." Guess what? You didn't do anything wrong, but
mhm.
you didn't actually get the outcome you wanted. That's even harder to then say, how can I control this, learn from it, evolve? And so I think that it's all in how you reframe and take control
I think, like,
of the
we could
situation.
and I agree with that, and I think you could go deep into the psychology of it all. At what point are you open to thinking that way, right? And so that I think that there's, like, that massive piece of self-reflection, that confidence piece that you can say, that humbleness, that humility, whatever, that you can say, okay, I'm going to take this and learn from it. Someone who is not self aware,
Yeah.
maybe lower on the self esteem, on the self confidence, that could shred them. And they won't be able to think in that respect in terms of there's an opportunity for me to take this and do great with this.
Yeah.
Do
Well,
you
it
agree?
requires 100%. I think this is the wild part about it is that like past traumas, past experiences will dictate future reactions.
Absolutely.
Psychological safety. If you're in an environment where you see someone else fail and they get ripped apart, they get judged, they get shamed, they get fired. Do you think you're going to admit like that's actual like fear for your well-being, your monetary way to life? Of course you're not
Absolutely.
going to. And so I think you're right, there has to be the right environment. There has to be then the right growth of self and self-awareness to realize what was my past and how does that dictate how I view the future, being able
Mhm.
to separate from that. But also, like, just like, let's talk about the brain for 1 second. When someone fails, there's a few things that happen. When you fail in that moment, you ignite what's called your activation of the amygdala. I think I'm saying that
Ooh,
right.
amygdala. Look at you, big
Right?
word.
But what that is the emotional response. And when you fail, what that emotional response is, it's like frustration, terror, it's disappointment, it's anger. Like all of these things, let's just take a minute. If you fail and you feel those things, how hard is it to stop, acknowledge, and move away from those things, like just
Mhm.
in itself?
Yep.
And I think it's because if you look back at how the humans evolved, like you fail at trying to attack your prey, like your meal later, you could die. And so you need to be scared. You need to have that emotional
She's
response.
gone so primitive with this. I
But
love
you know,
it.
isn't it
Yeah.
interesting though when you think about it, like that would be like you have a very strong stress response when you fail. So like a bunch of cortisol goes into your body. Meaning like have you ever failed and all of a sudden you get overwhelmed with like anxiety and you're
Of
like
course.
fearful and it's just a rush. You almost have like an arousal that's happening.
Yeah.
That's cortisol filling that stress. And so I just want to highlight that because I hope anyone listening that it's like, oh, it's really hard for me. No doubt it is. It
Super
should
hard.
be hard. Our brains make it that way. But it also means that you let's be aware of it so you know now it's normal. And how can we then acknowledge it? I'm not saying don't feel it, know what's happening.
You
Let
have
the
to go
rush.
through it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to go through it, and one thing I will suggest to folks when you go and you I know exactly that feeling. It's like, it feels like all the blood rushes to your head, and it feels like the tips of your hair are standing, like, right up, you know what I mean?
See,
And
mine is my chest. I always feel like it's like pulsating and it gets so tight and I just want to be like, oh
so I feel like my head starts like floating, right? And
yeah.
you know what? Like, say for example, it's a failure and like you've received an email from someone and you see like you've done something so
Oh,
fucking wrong,
I
like
know.
maybe by accident even. So it's
Yeah.
not a long drawn and and everything goes like this, you can't think. You can't think, you can't process, you're terrified. I would encourage people not to react in that exact moment. You need to go and give yourself a little bit of time. We're
I
all like
agree.
we all have all done it where we've gone, "Oh my god, this, and oh my god, that, and this and that," and you're spewing things makes no sense to anyone. You need to sit with that for a little bit. You
Yeah.
you actually do have to sit with the uncomfortableness of it before you can formulate what's your action plan or like where do you
Yeah.
need supports or where can you go better. You can't do that right away. So let's just
And
be
also
clear
as
with
a
that.
leader, like I have had people on my team fail and my reaction is the emotional reaction of how could you do like as much as I know and the environment I want to create, I still freak out.
Oh,
And
of
so even
course.
like give a minute for the others around you because what I've seen time and time again is as soon as someone that fails can acknowledge and take accountability that they have, and so self awareness, humility, accountability, and then can start to say, and let's do the retro. Here is where I failed. Here's the
Yeah.
specifics. And here's my plan to not do it again. Oh my gosh, I as a lead, I'm like, "Oh, okay, they get it. They
Yeah.
know, and now I wanna lean in and help them."
Right.
Whereas if they don't have all those things, which, like I said, it's self-awareness, it's humility, it's accountability, it's a retro, it's a growth plan. If they don't have those things, I'm like, they're out. Like they're not gonna change, they're not
Mhm.
gonna evolve, they're not gonna fail forward. And I get more mad, right? Like I get more impatient, I get more upset. And so
I
when
think
you
there's a
say
reasonable I was gonna say there's the reasonable amount of time that has to allow them to get there,
yeah.
and
What
when
do you
you
think that is?
say what's that?
How long do you think that is?
It depends on the fuck up. Like, I
Yeah,
I
you're right,
honestly
you're
I
right.
don't think it's like we're, like, 6 months later, I've finally come to terms with the fact that I screwed everyone over. But
Yeah.
I think, like so, for example, they find out the failure, you find out at the same time. They're in that high stress mode at this point. They're not there right yet. So if your reaction right away is incredibly emotional and like, "Holy fuck, like, you screwed this," they're not in a place for that, and, like, I think that's, like, you as a leader and your own growth mindset, you have to think, "Okay, this is not the time right now. This person at least needs to sleep on this.
Yeah.
They need to
Yeah.
think, I need to sleep on this before my emotions and my reactions get the better of me," because no matter what you say in that moment, if it's a little bit high stress, they're gonna be they're gonna lose it, like, you know what I mean? They're already clearly already feeling the fact that something has gone incredibly wrong at this
Think
point.
this is where know your relationships with each human, because
Yeah,
I've had
trust.
people that are just not very self-aware, and so there does require more of a reaction and a moment and
There
a
you go.
deep
That's
dive,
true.
whereas very self-aware people, I know that they are probably harder on themselves than I ever will be on them, and in that case, I agree with you. I think it's like, acknowledge you're their manager and leader, you should acknowledge and make a point, but give them a minute to get their head wrapped around it so that you can actually then solve and move forward. But this makes me think, I want to shift this to a personal example because,
Okay.
I just think that it's easier to kind of dissect. And I think actually feeling forward happens in every aspect of life, not
For
just in
sure.
the workplace. And so I'm going to use an example between you and I hope you don't
Uh-oh.
mind. And it's where I
Oh,
failed.
no. Shit.
We talked about it recently, and so it's came up. So during COVID, actually later on, I had planned a trip and I wanted Chelsea and her husband and kids, well, actually not the kids, Chelsea and Gary to come. But I knew it was going to be difficult because we're still in the tail end and having kids and figuring out what to do with them. So I kind of knew that they weren't going to be able to come. And it was a trip that we were planning with like three couples. And I knew it was gonna be a hard conversation and it could be conflict, and so I avoided it at all costs, to the point where it was disrespectful, it was rude, and it was very selfish of me. I was thinking about myself and not Chelsea, and we've had many conversations about this, so that's why I feel comfortable saying this, but up until this point, we go on the trip. I don't even think I failed. I don't even acknowledge it because I don't want to, because it's painful. And I don't even think about it twice. We get back, and Chelsea then finds out that we went. She didn't know because I didn't tell her, and none of us did, to the point where I kind of even said at one point, like, let's not post anything because I don't want to rub it in anyone's face. But I knew what I was doing. I think I knew, like, let's not acknowledge this. And so I got back, and Chelsea, being Chelsea, who is never afraid of conflict or having conversation, reached out to me and rightfully gave it to me, in a kind way, but rightfully and directly gave it to me. And I remember that conversation or that moment rather, so lucidly because I knew at that moment I fucked up. Like I failed. I failed as a friend. I failed as like a person in that moment, how I showed up, how I wanted to. And I had all these emotions. Like my amygdala was going off. I was scared. I was scared I was going to lose her. I was frustrated with myself. I had cortisol, like I was stressed. I was like feeling that chest tightness. And I actually think in that moment I learned a lot. And it probably was because it happened at a point where in my career I had learned to fail a lot better compared to previously to Shopify. I don't think I could have handled this in the same way, to be honest. That I think right in that convo, I acknowledged it. I took accountability, but I was like, I got to think about this. Like, but I knew I really did say like, like this is my bad. Like you did
Mhm.
nothing. This
Yeah,
is
you
all on
did.
me. And I really tried to learn from it and reframe how I was going to approach all relationships because although this happened between us, this has happened at many scales between other people in other moments. It was just never big enough, I think, to blow up and
To
actually
jolt.
feel like the failure that
Yeah.
it was and that I had to change it. Chelsea was amazing in sharing how she felt, how she reacted, and why it hurt. So I could learn a lot. So the feedback was there. But I had to really sit with it, and I felt so guilty and bad and shamed, not because of anything you were saying, but because I knew that I had been a shitty, shitty friend, let alone best friend. And so through those feelings and emotions, I could process what became self aware. But then I really did a retro in my head of like, how would I have changed this going forward, knowing what I know now? And I think that is the most valuable piece to failing
Mhm.
forward is once you've done it, you have more information, whether it's through feedback, like you giving it to me, or through exposure to feelings or experiences or whatever. And in that, I was like, I'm never going to do this again. I'm never going to avoid a hard conversation up front because I know it's gonna be 10 times as hard later, and it was selfish. Great relationships deserve hard conversations, and I just
Oh,
didn't realize that. And so
you.
but
Look
it's
at
true,
you
right?
evolving as a
I
human.
I mean, but that moment forced that. And so and, like, our relationship is stronger as a result of it.
Yep.
And so there's just like there's so many areas of this when I was thinking about it this morning actually like you provided psychological safety. I knew that I could fail. Well, I really hoped anyways, but I did know that you were going to take me back, that we were going to go work through it, that I had that ability. I knew that you were upset and mad, but I had trust. I had a
Mhm.
relationship, and so there's so many things in there that hopefully resonate with others, and you can put that in the frame of personal relationships, work relationships, or whatever you need. And I'm not saying it was easy. It was one of like the hardest
Yeah.
moments in our relationship,
Yeah.
and
Agreed.
continue to just kind of come up and be chatted about, and you learn more as we go. Like that's a kind of cool part too.
Yeah, I mean, we do have like we it comes up sometimes in conversation, but it's more of a the bring it up and just like, "Do you remember that time?" It's not like bring it up and like
No, she
kind
just
of
wants
like
to shame me more. No, she
dig it
doesn't.
dig it in, you know what I mean? I think it was a
Uh,
massive learning experience for both of us, and it's funny because Britt says that one time was large enough to kind of jolt her. Because for sure, I can guarantee you as having been friends with Britt for over 20 years now, she's done this a lot, but in smaller doses to where it wasn't unacceptable. It was just, kind of that's just a Brit thing. But then, like, a big one happens and you go, oh, fuck. Like, that's a pattern that we need to kind of stop here now at this point. And
yeah,
she did. She has successfully managed to do that.
trying.
We all have our issues. Trust me. We all have our things that we need to work on. That is actually just a really great example of failing forward. And I think that will resonate for people, the trust factor in the relationship. And it's funny because I was on Instagram this morning looking at a meme, as I always do, and I send them to all kinds of people in the mornings and that. And it
Chelsea is
was,
aggressive about her
yeah,
Instagram memes.
I'm the meme queen. So it was like 8 signs like of like, our true friends or whatever. And one of them was, you can never lose a true friend. Like, they will always be there. If they're lost, they were never your true friends. And like,
Yeah,
I think that that really speaks to that trust and that psychological safety. Shit can happen. But if it does, you can work through it. And it's like we say with, work or marriages or friendships, there is a way. But
yeah,
I
I love
wanted
that.
before we jump onto something else, I wanted to talk really quickly before I lose it on risk aversion,
Oh,
or
yeah,
like,
let's get into that. That's
yeah.
interesting.
So, like, just really quickly on like avoiding those conversations, or any. I'm not going
It's
specifically to that
funny,
example.
I just laugh because I never thought of it as risk aversion, and that's exactly what it was. And so you just, like, gave me a little light bulb moment, but go on.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. But like also with regards to work, right? So fail at something and then you become so risk averse that you're not willing to take risks in the future, for example. So, and I'm not saying risking the friendships, but I mean, like, say you wanted to go and take another trip and you did appropriately the conversation and I said, oh, sorry, like, thanks for the invite, can't go. But anyways, you do it properly. Say you decide, well, I'll just never take trips again with my friends. Like, that would be fucking stupid. You know what I mean? Like, there's a way and there's a. So like with work, for example, you do something, you fail, you feel really bad. You go, I'm never going to do anything like risky again. I'm never going to take calculated risks. I'm just going to avoid that altogether. Like, wrong,
Yeah.
right? You're never going to get a
I think
success
that's
if you don't
actually,
take
like,
the
a
risk.
very common approach, though, sadly. Like, I think it's a great call out because I think that's how companies die. If you
Oh,
just
yeah.
think about like, especially if you shame the failure or mistake, then people don't wanna do it, and then it's risk aversion, and then you have no more creativity, you have no more, evolution or like, it's scary.
You have to be really careful, and it's a good link to creativity, and I know we'll talk about it in another podcast, but that will effectively halt,
Yeah,
that possibly that creativity or those other elements that will lead you to that eventual success. So you might be stalled at consistent failure or consistent mediocrity. I don't know, like, maybe it's that. Like, you're not willing to kinda go out on the limb
yeah.
anymore, right?
Have you done that in any aspect of your life, do you think? Like, I'm curious. I mean, like
Oh my.
I think it stems like this example, but I can think of other ones where it's been risk aversion, but I don't think
Um,
I do it as much now. I think it is like I guess I'm curious, sorry, I'm thinking out loud here. Is risk aversion more environment influenced or is it more individual influenced?
well, I think it can be both, obviously. I think it just depends on how you're impacted. I mean, think about environment, COVID-19 and whatnot. Like, so paranoid if anything's going to happen, I'm going to wear a mask for the rest of my life and anything could come up versus like individual influence, like work situations, a mistake that was made. I think
Yeah, I think it's
it
both, you're
just
right. You
depends
just
on
made
the
me think of an
person.
example. So,
Dep-
like, I think I've talked about it before. We did this chaos bot at Shopify where we let it, we would wipe everyone's calendars to get out of the monotony of just like routine meetings,
Meetings.
etc. And the first time we did it, we deleted all of our external meetings, meaning if you had sales calls or
Oh, fuck.
support calls with merchants, they were gone. That was a big fuck up. That was a failure. And, we got a lot of feedback, but we also like we knew right away it was a mess up. And one approach would have been we're never doing this again. That would have been the risk
Right.
aversion. And instead, we said, there was so much good in this, and this was one aspect that was a failure. And so we looked at it more as test driven development. You're going to build a product, you're going to learn what works and what doesn't work. You're going to be aware that there's always going to be failures in it because it's not going to be perfect, and you're going to adjust. And so we kept going for years around this. But I think that that's a really good example of the environment was safe to say we're not afraid of risk, we're not afraid of failing, so we're okay with it. So we didn't have the risk aversion there. But then also personally, the people that were deciding on it were also able to, make decisions that were risky as well and to move forward. So I think it is both. But I think the environment outweighs it because if the environment doesn't allow for it, you know what you show up in the culture. You're like, I'm not going to do that. Why would
Oh
I?
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I've been in situations too where I've effectively been bitch slapped, but in other like not physically, but like where you've gone
An
not a
emotional bitch slap. I
an
like that. We should
emotional
tag
bitch
that.
slap. I'm never asking a question again. I'm
Yeah.
never speaking up again. Um, and you say that in the moment. I mean, and it really does depend on the person because I think up until I hit about 17, 18, I had a turning point in my life. I was probably a very risk averse person, very good with routine and structure and whatnot. And something jolted me at that point in my life where I had to be more risky. And I've actually and calculated risks and sometimes maybe not so much, whatever. But I've always leaned a little bit more towards, but what if? What if I
Yeah.
do this and something bad might happen? I'm going to be as ready as I possibly can for the bad. Expect
Yeah.
there will be some bad. Nothing you will do will be perfect. If you're
Yeah.
doing something and it's perfect every time, you're not doing a very good job. Like you're
Yeah.
just doing the same shit over and over and over. You need to try a bit harder, right? Like if it's always
Yeah, we used to
perfect,
always say, "If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough."
you're not
Like,
trying
to
hard enough.
a really real example of, if you're not failing, like, people aren't giving you feedback. Like, you're doing a
They're fucking
mediocre job,
lying to
peanut
you.
butter spread, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
It's
And
just
so I
it's
do think
good.
there's an appropriate amount of failure, and the cool thing about anything in life as humans, as we learn, is it's a loop statement like in your brain, right? So you experience something, you learn from it, you have that whether you want to or not, that tells you a pattern of behavior of what happens again. And so when you said when you were 18 you had a life experience that really changed your perspective, how you could take more risks, how you learned to probably fail and be okay and grow with it, well
Mhm.
then you're going to do it more and more and more.
Yep.
If you're getting the other extreme, it's a lot harder to come back from. It's a lot harder to learn. And
Yeah.
so don't think for anyone listening who might not like failing, who avoids it at all costs, who
I don't
doesn't
like it.
like risk, don't think that you need to take the next moment and do this massive thing and be great at it. No, my first few were really small. It was literally things like I didn't like how I wasn't able to influence a leader and how my communication, it wasn't this like big fuck up, but
Yeah.
it was like, I need to
Not
change this
not
and I need
passing an
to learn.
interview or something
Yeah,
for a job, not
exactly.
getting the job. We've all been
And some of
there.
them actually, the earliest ones were external factors where I didn't have as much influence that I could then rationalize in my
Yeah.
brain to learn from. But then it became, okay, now we got to
This
take a
was a
step
me
up and
thing.
learn
Yeah.
internal and self awareness. But I think like take baby steps. And even at this point, just try reframing. When something doesn't go as planned, sit in it, ask yourself, what role did I have in this? Create that self awareness. Maybe tell one person if you've never told someone that you failed. Create that confidence and humility that you're able to talk about it. And, journal, reflect on it. What could have changed? What do you want to learn from it? Even if you're not ready to tell others, there's baby steps you can take. And as you start to create that pattern and learn from it, I really think it's a superpower that people have. The
Super.
greatest people I know that are the brightest, have the most mastery, that are the most confident, they know how to fail forward. And they're not making bad failures, like we said
Mhm.
earlier. Like they're not being lazy, they're not making the same mistake over. They are using it as like a strength in to really iterate and move forward from it. And so I aspire to that.
Oh, totally agree with that. I think if you look at it, any leader, I mean, obviously, we talked about growth mindset loads. Someone with a growth mindset, employee leader, whatever the case may be, are going to learn how to master and promote failing forward. And if you think about it, like we said, that journey, or if you think about it visually like a house, you might have four walls of your house failures, let's
Yeah.
say failures. That roof is your success at the end of the
Yeah.
day. I mean, they're holding up, they've gotten you to that ultimate success, that little peak roof, that little turret on the top with the princess in it, whatever.
You're getting
Like
too
the
home channel.
I know, I gotta
HBO.
stop watching Disney. But anyways, like these are the things, and it sounds so minor, but I think it's actually just so important. And we've talked about the psychology and the humility and the self reflection, and it's going to take time. So, like Britt says,
Yeah.
take those steps forward. Consider those as all little pieces of your journey to get to that ultimate success. Don't shy. Don't be so risk averse that you're never willing to go above and beyond or to do something new. That's not what we're saying.
Yeah.
Be uncomfortable for a little bit because it's actually going to be good for you.
Yeah. But oh boy, is it uncomfortable.
Oh, fucking sucks. Fucking
Yeah.
sucks. But
Yeah. Like let's
it,
not sugar.
there's not sugarcoat it. But anywho,
I'm
and
excited because I think the podcast we're going to do after this is going to be around creativity, and creativity is unachievable without risk taking and
oh my gosh,
failing forward. So I think it
hugely
just really does
interconnected.
like, yeah, build on top of it. So we'll get into
Totally
that,
does.
but let's close out with some wine time.
Let's do wine time. Perfect.
Okay, see you in a sec.
See ya. Here we are, folks. Welcome back. Welcome back to wine time. Yeah.
Cheers. I got a mimosa because it's
It's too
early in
early.
Arizona, and so I'm not right into the wine. I needed something more approachable.
Who was talking? Oh, it was Shannon who said more approachable in our last podcast.
Oh, did she?
Remember, I was like, why is that term ringing a bell right now? Because Shannon, who is also double acts as a sommelier, was like, this is quite approachable. I'm like, oh, Brittany, look at you learning.
So funny. I didn't even remember that. I clearly am just like a little parrot. I'm just mimicking. You
You
know what
just,
I mean?
how
Like,
did you not remember that?
well, now I do. It just didn't pop up that that was the reason I said it, you know?
So I'm drinking a friendly white. Okay. Using my own new
Yeah, yeah,
terminology.
yeah. Create it. What does it taste like, Chelsea? What's the taste? Is it barnyardy? Is it
Oh,
sweet?
oh
Remember?
my god. No, it doesn't have any barnyardy taste. Like this is a Riesling, so it is a Riesling, I think. Yeah. It's a Riesling. So it's a little bit on the sweeter side. Hold on, I'm gonna show you. Let me take a sip though, because it's
Okay,
yummy.
okay. Sip away, and I will give all the listeners. She's sipping, she's gulping, she's doing the lip thing. Oh, yeah, taste
Yeah.
it.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I have just like a Peller family reserve.
Is that Ontario?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a 2022 Riesling. Yes, Niagara.
Okay.
Okay. Medium bodied and dry. I mean, maybe drier for a Riesling, but Rieslings aren't that dry. Fruity flavors on the palate, followed by a refreshing citrus finish that goes well with grilled seafood and cream sauce pastas. I should have
Okay,
drank
so
this
one
one.
feedback,
Okay.
just because this is the failure episode,
Oh,
feedback is a
shit.
gift, it goes on it. Shannon didn't read the label. She just, tasted and gave
We're just destroying Shannon
descriptors.
now. Listen, Shannon, you didn't live up to the viewer's expectations
No,
of
I meant
reading.
you're not
Oh,
living
you're
up.
giving me
Shannon
a
did.
failure. You're a bitch. Um,
This is the amygdala
Listen,
coming out.
I don't know what is in this wine. I'm like, it's grapes, okay? They're fermented. Like,
It's
that's all that
white
fucking
grapes,
matters.
green
Yeah.
grapes. No,
It's
I'm just teasing. Okay,
11%
so
for those who are interested, okay? It's cheap, probably
you like
15
it?
bucks. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't mind it. I mostly enjoy a white and that, and Riesling a little bit on the sweeter side for me now. I'd probably go,
Yeah.
I'm on the Pinot Grigios now, whatever. But
You're
yeah,
back, you're original.
let me
And so
just
what
give
would
it.
you give it, 1 to 10?
Actually, quite good. I would give it an 8. I would give it an
Oh,
8. Makes for a nice breakfast wine.
love it,
You know those ones
Well,
that
you're a
make the.
little later than I am right now,
I
but
know.
it's, like, definitely a brunch wine.
Yeah, I can't say it's breakfast anymore, but it's before noon, so
Mind you, we
nothing wrong with
just,
that.
the great segue to our recent trip. I was gonna say
Ooh,
New Orleans, we had, plenty of breakfast beverages.
a
I'm actually
breakfast.
surprised that we're drinking again because it's, like, a week off since we've been home for not even, like, 5 days.
Listen, I had no issues. Yeah, okay, returned Tuesday night for us, later at night, 8, 9 o'clock. The next night, no, I didn't have anything to drink, but Thursday I was back on the wagon.
Yeah, and I was like, well, I had a wedding in Mexico for 4
Yeah,
days, and then I went to New Orleans for 5 days. So I was like 9 days of rallying with friends and,
yeah,
like, creating fun experiences. Um, and I took, like, maybe 2 days off, maybe 3 days off where I, like, really barely drank. But it was a grind, like, it was a fun grind, but when I came back, I was like, "I need health in my body." Like,
yeah,
I need
in me.
H2O, I need movement, I
Yeah.
need sleep, like, all those things.
Yeah, yeah, you needed a detox. I detoxed for 3 days. I felt good about it. Though I don't think I drank that much in New Orleans, to be honest. Like, I think
We
the
only did,
one.
like, 1, 2 nights. 2 nights I did,
Yeah,
I feel
2
like.
nights, like, and there was one night which was started out, 2:30 PM and went, but we don't go to, like, 2 in the morning. We're all so old now that it's, like, 10:30. We're like, "Let's call it." But
I
you.
think that night, though, we were out from, like, noon
Oh,
because we went to
yeah,
that pub
because we
and,
went
like, had a cider.
to drinks first before we
Yeah.
went for a late
So it was, like,
lunch.
noon until midnight, like, it was, like, 12
I'd say
hours.
that's pretty good. We
Yeah.
can still
We
hang.
still got it.
We can still hang. Now, we weren't on Bourbon Street, okay? We're too old for that. We went to
Oh, we
Frenchman
did. We had
Street.
lunch there, and that
Oh, we
was
had
an
lunch.
experience.
Yeah, we had lunch on Bourbon Street. We were not on Bourbon Street on the weekend evenings because that place is a fucking shit show. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. If you haven't
The
been to New Orleans, woo.
Oh my god, anyone who's asked me like, "Oh, how was it?" And I said like that, I'll tell you that Bourbon Street, the only way I can explain it is it's a spectacle. Like it's a
Yeah.
full-on spectacle.
Just the scent of vomit
And
and
urine.
alcohol constantly there,
Yeah,
and
hurricanes
urine.
and
Yeah.
urine. I smell a lot of urine there. No
Yeah,
wonder
me
they
too.
they wash the streets in the
Not
morning
enough.
because like God knows what's going on there. It's a whew, something. I mean I enjoy New Orleans. I have to say I did enjoy it. I don't feel the need to really go back. Like I
Yeah,
feel good. I feel good. I've done it. I've seen the things. We went
yeah,
to the World War II museum on Monday. Oh
yeah.
wow, that's pretty amazing. I didn't realize it was the National World War II Museum. It's
Oh,
freaking
I didn't know
state of
that.
the art. It's pretty fantastic. Yeah,
Oh, high recommendation.
Katie and I went with Joe and Gary, and I think we are there for about 5 hours.
Yeah, you were, because I was flying out that day, and I was like, "Where
We're
are,"
still
like,
there.
you were there for a long time.
And we blitzed through the last building. Like there is a lot more, but it's like that kind of lingering where you're standing and slightly walking. Man, my leg was killing me. Gary's
Yeah.
hernia was like
Oh, how did
out
he
of
manage
control.
that?
No, he was barely managing through it, but he was giving a brave face. I was like, "We can stop." I kept offering to get him a wheelchair because there's
Oh
wheelchairs,
my
and of
god,
course,
imagine.
a man with pride is nothing to fuck with because he's like, don't even suggest that." I was like, "I'd gladly sit in a
I
wheelchair right
know.
now. I'm
You're
not
like,
gonna
"I
lie."
might go get one for myself
Yeah,
just
yeah. I
to
was like, "Can you push
see."
me around?" Like, cause fuck, my feet are really hurting right now.
Ugh,
Yeah, it
yeah,
was
no,
good
and the
times.
Gator tour was unreal.
The Gator
If you
tour
ever
is
go to
so
New
cool.
Orleans, go do that. Our tour guide was, I think, like, shout out to Steve. Was it
No,
Steve?
no, it's Jay. It was
Oh,
Jay.
Jay, sorry. If he ever listens to this, how dare I get the
Shout
wrong
out
name.
to Steve. It was Jay.
Okay, shout out to Jay. I think he was the best Gator tour guide.
So
Been doing it
funny.
for, I think he said, like, 18 years.
17 years, yeah.
Yeah,
You're
not
just
getting any of
fucking
these facts right.
yeah, just see. Just shut up. No, I'm just kidding. Um,
Just get it all wrong.
I know he was
He
amazing.
put a hot dog in his mouth, hit the water, the gator came up, he held it underneath its chin with all the teeth, and then dropped the hot dog in his mouth.
It
It
was
was the scariest thing
insane.
I've ever seen. Yeah,
It was
insane.
insane, like, this guy, and it was so funny, okay? So, interesting, let me give everyone a tip, though, the gator tours. So, the gators go kind of dormant as the water gets cold, right? So, we're approaching winter, so they're not out and about, like, as much, right? So, it's hard to get spotting of a gator in this temperature. Even go a little bit later, good luck seeing one at all because apparently they bury down into the mud when
Yeah,
it gets
to keep
quite
warm.
cold. Yeah, and they wanna stay warm, right? Whereas in the hot months, they're out and about, they're on the rocks, they're sunning and whatever. So anyways, he managed to get some gators to us, but he didn't look like confident that we were going to see some gators on that.
No,
He's
and
like,
actually,
"I'm."
I overheard the other crews, and they were like, "We didn't see any."
So they just, you know what? The difference between having a good guide and not,
Huge.
like, this guy had been there for 17 years. He lives in the marshes or whatever, deep
He goes
down.
swimming in these marshes,
He goes swimming in them. Okay, he goes, "Okay, guys, I'm gonna do everything I can for you to see a gator. I'm gonna call the gators."
and he's French, he's Acadian.
Yeah, he's Acadian. So we're like, "Well, how are you gonna do that?" He said, "Well, I'm gonna speak French to him." I'm like dying because I'm like, "What?" I
Is
was
he
like,
fucking with
"He's
us?
fucking with us." He starts yelling in French,
Viens ici! Viens
"Viens
ici!
ici! Viens ici!" And then all kinds of incoherent stuff. I'm not even sure that was French. But anyways, the gators showed up. Like, they came swimming to him.
Like a pet
It
would, like
was
a dog. Like, you
crazy.
know, it really was. It was
So,
impressive.
we saw at least 3 gators, like, in close up that came when he called. The
Maybe we should add a
craziest thing
video to when we post this on Instagram, I'll add a video of the gator.
of the hot
You might
dog
hear
one
Jay
and
in the
stuff.
bagaround. You might even me
Oh,
hear, like, one of us gasping.
yeah. We've got 2, like, well, we've got a couple of videos, but there's one where you get to hear him hollering, which is just, like, craziness, and you're like, "This is a joke," you know? No way the gators came, and then you can see the other video where a gator, he gets about an 8-footer up with a hot dog on a stick and then
Yeah,
grabs
that
it.
one was mine that I took. It's good. I think the other
So
one was
good.
Rochelle's. Oh, it was good. Anyways, so
So
that's what you
fun.
do if you go to New Orleans.
You gotta do a
You
gator
drink,
tour.
you listen to great music,
Yep.
you avoid Bourbon Street, go to Frenchman,
Yeah.
and go see a gator. Yeah.
Go see a gator, walking tours, visit there's a couple plantations.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we didn't get to see the ones because we went on a Sunday, and a lot of the things are closed on a
The
Sunday.
cemeteries, yeah.
So the cemeteries and there's a couple of plantations that we kinda missed out on because and that you could actually go in, but we weren't
I
able
didn't
to
know that.
because they were not open, to the public on Sundays. So that's unfortunate. Had we realized that, I'm sure we would have,
I'm sure Joe
probably
knew. Joe
scheduled.
was,
Oh,
Katie's fiancé,
blame Joe.
was our tour guide while we
Yep.
were there. He knew everything.
We had a lot of great food, that Cajun food. I'm not even gonna lie, and you're gonna be impressed by this. I'm actually starting to enjoy some spice,
Shocking.
okay? The night before we left, I ordered spicy fries and I got like this cheese sauce I poured over it and I dipped it in ranch too. But like I was like so
Sounds like a
surprised.
heart attack in a bowl.
Yeah, it was. And everyone had a little bit of it after because it was yummy. Like
Was
I'm
it?
telling you, I'm starting to eat some spicy stuff.
I
That's
love
good
that. You
for me.
got slap your mama spice that you brought
Slap
home.
your mama. I brought my slap your mama back. And
Have
yeah,
s have you guys used it?
oh yeah, because we opened it we opened it in New Orleans anyways. But yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Gary likes it, the kids like it. It's not like I didn't get the crazy hot one, I got just kind of the regular one. It's like a mix of seasoning salt and cayenne and stuff like that, so it's
Yeah.
not aggressive, but it's adds a nice little kick.
Yeah, there you go.
It's more of a red
Slap your
hot
mama.
type situation, but yummy. Lots of sodium. Kill you.
Yeah, that's
Kill
what
you
you want. I
eventually.
have low blood pressure, so I'm fine to do that. I always say it's like my excuse, get it up.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay,
Anyways.
well, with that, cheers.
Oh, yeah, cheers.
Yep, don't put that wine down. Let's cheers.
No, I
Love
won't
ya.
have to drink it. Love you.
See you soon.
Cheers to beers.